Well, did Donald Trump's Truth Social back in 2021, when it was on the balls of its butt financially, accept a series of loans totaling $8 million from entities tied to Vladimir Putin, including a bank in Dominica? Well, that's what The Guardian reported in a series of reports in 2023 led by Hugo Lowell. And Donald Trump didn't like the way that sounded, didn't like the sound of that the Southern District of New York, which was once a proud Department of Justice unit, it was investigating whether Donald Trump's Truth Social was involved in money laundering involving people closely tied to Vladimir Putin. And so he sued The Guardian and other entities in Sarasota, Florida, for defamation. Donald Trump's weapon of choice when he wants to change the narrative. Doesn't like the reporting, sue a paper, a media conglomerate, a person for millions or billions of dollars. Could be the BBC, could be the Wall Street Journal. And then these cases sort of die on the vine, or he loses them, or he dismisses them, but he changes the narrative, right? He creates micro news cycles that he tries to control. But we just got new reporting that the Sarasota judge responsible for the case just dismissed the bulk of the claims that The Guardian committed defamation, instead finding that their reporting was well-sourced and well-reported, and Trump could not make out what's required to win a defamation case, which is actual malice. Judge Carroll ruled, and I'll read you from this order in a moment, ruled that they'd have to show, since they're a public figure, run by a public figure, the Trump side, that The Guardian and other reporting knew or should have known that what they were reporting was not true. But this backfired on Donald Trump, because if you read the order, it's effectively saying there was good grounds and good cause for someone to argue that there was an active investigation related to Donald Trump's Truth Social, related to investments made by people close to Vladimir Putin, plain and simple. This is a complicated story. I'm going to unpack it for you right here on Black Friday on Legal AF. Take a moment. We're not having a sale, but we are trying to get more people to be subscribers. So hit the free subscribe button and help us continue to grow this pro-democracy channel. Now, back in 2023, The Guardian and other sources reported about the following entities: Paxum, P-A-X-U-M Bank in Dominica, which claim to fame is that it did a lot of funding in the porn industry, did not hold a U.S. license. Hold that thought. A trust that just got created in May of 2021 called ES Family Trust, that those two entities loaned $8 million to a struggling Truth Social. Now, the reason they needed the money at that moment, as if you recall, Donald Trump hadn't yet been elected, wasn't making money hand over fist in the cryptocurrency business. And the merger of this special purpose acquisition company, SPAC, and Truth Social was being held up for regulatory purposes during the Biden administration. So Trump didn't have access to the tens of millions of dollars that he wanted, and they were running out of money in the burn rate of Truth Social. So they had a guy named Patrick Orlando, who was also accused of insider trading and other problems, tipping information related to the acquisition. Orlando owned a company called Digital World. They were the SPAC, this single-purpose entity that was going to acquire Truth Social. But he let it be known that he was going to acquire Truth Social, which is a no-no in the SPAC world. Orlando, for a fee of $240,000, Patrick Orlando brokered a deal involving the porn bank, Paxum Bank, in Dominica, and a newly created entity called ES Family Trust, which once you pierce through that, which The Guardian did in its reporting, was run by Anton Postelnikov. Postelnikov, or Postelnikov, was the nephew of Alex Smirnov, who's an ally to Donald Trump and runs the ports, a very lucrative business in Russia, Rosmorport. So you've got Alexander Smirnov's nephew, who runs ES Family Trust, along with some other people who were mentioned, connected to Paxim Bank, sends $8 million to Donald Trump. Now, the reporting was that it was so not transparent that even insiders within Truth Social, which included at one point its CFO, David Nunez, and Kash Patel and Don Jr. were like, where's the money coming from? Now, there's another link here. Two of the guys that were convicted of insider trading and making $40 million, having been tipped off that Digital World was going to acquire Truth Social, Donald Trump's company, Michael Schwartzman, he's linked also to the ES Family Trust. So you've got an indicted and convicted insider trader making money off the Trump transaction, who's also involved through his relationship with Anton Postelnikov with ES Family Trust, which, along with the porn bank, makes $8 million, an $8 million emergency loan to Trump. And they do it in the form of receiving a warrant in return so that their $8 million loan can be converted into a $20 to $40 million equity interest in the company. That's the Guardian reporting. Why Paxim Bank, not licensed in the U.S.? Why ES Family Trust? And who is ES Family Trust? Why the amount of money? Why did the Trump organization accept it? Why did Don Jr. sign off on it? And then they reported, as far as they knew, based on their discussions as good reporters with the Southern District of New York prosecutor's office, that they were looking into whether there was money laundering going on. Where did the $8 million come from? From Putin to curry favor with Donald Trump? Or what was the relationship? Here's how the judge, in his dismissal of the defamation case brought by Trump Media and Technology Group, here's how he puts it in the new order that he just put out. He says, as it relates to The Guardian, the article reflects it was based on multiple sources familiar with the investigation, review of internal Trump Media and Technology Group communications. So they got their hands on insider communications, investigation of the entities who made the loans, and fruitless requests for further information from the Department of Justice, the Investigator's Office, and outside counsel for TMTG. He goes over the reporting, and then he finds there's no evidence of actual malice. So he never has to get to, on a motion to dismiss, he never has to get to the question of whether these statements were defamatory or not defamatory, if they were true or not true. He says a key component of defamation for a public figure like Truth Social is that there be actual malice, which under the law of the Supreme Court, in a case we call Times v. Sullivan, means that you knew or should have known that what you're writing is not true. And that could not be proven. So Judge Carroll has dismissed the case. He's also found that the case is likely a violation of Florida's SLAPP Act, which is a body of law that says you can't sue to chill the First Amendment expression of somebody, in this case, the Guardian and the other papers. Now, there's going to be an ability to replead and bring the case. But I think, again, Donald Trump, just like he is with the Wall Street Journal lawsuit down in Miami, just as he was with the case against Michael Cohen, and now this case, they're dead in the water. But that's not what Donald Trump's angle of attack is. He doesn't care. This is just a part of his toolbox to reshape the narrative and go after people when they call them money launderers. Do I know whether Donald Trump is or is not a money launderer or his company is? I do not. Do I think the Guardian was accurately reporting what they knew at the time and had to report it? Absolutely. I mean, what would Donald Trump have the American people believe? That it's not newsworthy, that his company that he still owns and operates through his sons took an $8 million loan from a porn bank in Dominica from an entity whose controlling stakeholders are close personal friends of Putin, that's not relevant? You know, you want to know when you're, although it didn't seem to matter in the election, but you should want to know whether the person you're voting for president or keeping in office has been turned in some way, financially exploited in some way by our adversary, the Russians. You know, that was think about this. This was the only lending in the entire world that they could find, was this loan that they had to pay $240,000 fee to Patrick Orlando, the guy that was acquiring their company, as a finder's fee. That's the only, no major bank in New York would do it. No minor bank anywhere would do it. Your local savings and loan, your local building and loan, we're at the holiday time, would make this loan. So you got to have a bank that's not licensed in the United States that makes loans to the sex industry, and a newly formed entity nobody's ever heard of. In the banking world, in any company world, you have a department called compliance that has to vet to make sure, for instance, that you don't violate the Patriot Act, that you don't violate anti-money laundering statutes, to make sure that you know your customer, that you know your investor, that it's not opaque. You're not allowed to accept money from anybody, especially one that's public. So where is the investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission about the lack of controls around this, the lack of controls to ensure compliance with the Patriot Act and the anti-money laundering statutes? Where is it? Well, wouldn't you know it, Trump's in charge of the SEC these days. So, of course, we're not learning about it. Even the judge called out the porn relationship with the bank, which I'm sure he didn't love to have to write from his perch in Sarasota. But here's what he says on page 2 of the lawsuit. This action arises from the publication of several articles reporting on a federal criminal investigation related to Truth Social's receipt of 2 payments totaling $8 million. On March 15th and March 17th, 2023, The Guardian published 2 articles stating federal prosecutors in New York were conducting a money laundering investigation related to the payments, which were wired through the Caribbean from Paxim Bank and ES Family Trust, entities with ties to an ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, and a history of providing banking services to the sex worker industry. This is from the judge's order. The articles report Wilkerson's statements. That's one of the founders with Trump of Truth Social. Used to work with him on The Apprentice. There's a big suit going on in Delaware about how much Wilkerson's the value of his equity in the company is. Wilkerson turned out to be a whistleblower about these loans. So the articles report Wilkerson's statements that the origins of the loans caused alarm at Truth Social, and that Truth Social's then CFO weighed returning the money, but the money was ultimately not returned. Pretty good whistleblowing, if you ask me. So we're going to continue to follow the trail of the money laundering involving potentially Vladimir Putin, as reported by The Guardian, now that this case is on less than life support in Florida, right here on Legal AF on Friday. Take a minute, hit the free subscribe button. That's your vote. Early voting has started to support what we do on Legal AF and help us continue to grow. We're going to hit 1 million, I think, before Christmas at the rate we're going. Certainly with your help, we're going to go over 975,000 this weekend. It's all for free. Come over to Legal AF Substack, where you can read this filing for yourself under Filings AF. And if you can swing a $7 a month subscription, now you're a card-carrying member of Legal AF, and you're helping us along the way. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touches Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.